do a little bit of the gender bending. So I think that boys can wear skirts and have long hair. So that's why I look like this today. But yes, thank you so much for having me. This has been such a pleasure to come out here and think a little bit more about my own relationship to Catholicism, my relationship to my drag family and my biological family. And this presentation, what I was saying to Jules, was super emotional to make, just because I've been reconnecting with my own biological family and my own biological mother, who's very, very Catholic. And we were really, really close growing up. And I lost quite a lot of people in my own family, that being chosen family, coming from like an immigrant community of Italian Canadians. So like we may not be blood related, but my family is quite large. And when I became disconnected from my biological family, I really went out of my way to start building my own chosen family. And that was even before I got into drag. So just to like give a little bit of background about how I ended up into this, if you want to click on to the next one, Bliss. Click on to the next slide. Oh, yes. This is why I put these in here so I don't forget. So just a bit of a content warning before we start out for anybody who's extra sensitive. So this presentation is going to talk about the housing crisis, healthcare crisis, police-related trauma, hospital-related trauma, suicidal ideation tendencies, suicide, and death. Just because my own personal experiences have really led me to really question morality and mortality and all of those things, and what it means to live in a just society and what it means to try and fight for the people that are still living and trying to remember the people that have gone. And that's really come from my Catholic upbringing and my own experiences in life. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the people that we've lost, because I wouldn't have started my drag family without all these experiences. And I wouldn't be the person I am today if I wasn't remembering all these people. So as much as it is sad, I do consider it to be a big reason for why I'm still here today. So if we want to click on to the next guy, if I was standing here out of drag, you would see Rebecca. So Johnny and Rebecca look a little bit close, but there's definitely a bit of gender play in there. My drag character has let me come into my own as a she, they. My kids at the Boys and Girls Club in the YWCA used to bully me into coming out as trans, and it only took them 2 years of bullying, but I put the they in there. But yeah, I really started up doing drag because I was working with so many queer youth, and I saw all these Gen Z beautiful people really expanding their understandings of gender and religion and community and what it means to be a moral person in this world. And I really think that religion and spirituality for me are all about morality. That's what it always comes back down to, and life. If we want to click on the next guy. Oh, but yes, I have a visual arts background, so like this is also why I love all the art of Catholicism. It really helps me with my stories and my teaching and all of that, and I really try and rely on oral histories, which is also a Catholic tradition. So I think the thing that I came out of Catholic school with, I went to Catholic school all throughout my life. I went to church every Sunday with my mom. Whenever somebody died, we went to church like every day that week and we lit candles. So I spent a lot of time in churches, a lot of time looking at the art, and a lot of time actually studying the Beatitudes. So my walking away from Catholic school, as much as I was like a little rebel, the Beatitudes really stuck in my brain. And I wrote them down for myself, but we had 1 million coloring sheets with these things listed on them. And it really stuck with me. So for those who weren't raised Catholic, or just for like some fun Beatitude summary, this is from Jesus's Sermon on the Mount, and it was really talking, it's one of his like main teachings, and one of the things that, stuck with me even today. So the first couple Beatitudes are, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who have been persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." And that's from Matthew chapter 5. And I think that those things, especially the thirst for righteousness, really stayed with me. My mom raised me really understanding interfaith relationships and understanding Palestine as a holy land that Jewish people, Muslim people, and Catholic people, and people of all different faiths share. And her understanding of this really led us to talk a lot about the Holocaust and the war in Afghanistan and understanding war and conflict and boundaries. And as I got older, I started to study colonization, the Catholic Church's role in colonization, and it just led me to really struggle with my own faith. And I think it's really through drag and community building that I got a chance to reconnect with my faith and really stay with the positive things that I had learned and trying to build community in a way that's a lot more malleable and a lot more open and a lot more based on these beatitudes of just understanding that like people do thirst for righteousness. People do need the space to fight for something good and to call for something good. And just like relying on this as like a moral thing for me, let me like stay with Jesus's teachings in a way that was really healthy for me. And the reason that I chose to become a saint is because I really think that queer people have lived quite a lot of lives. And we, especially queer youth, are under a lot of pressure. And this pressure leads to just insanely high mortality rates. We know that queer people are more likely to be unhoused. Queer people struggle with high rates of suicide and suicidal ideation. And I really think I lost a couple people to suicide growing up, but it was when an activist in Hamilton died that it really hit home for me how important it was to support each other and be there for each other spiritually and mentally and physically. And if we just want to click to the next slide, this is the bit where it gets a bit heavy. So I don't know if any of you heard about my friend Ezra, but he actually died here in Toronto. So Ezra was arrested for defending encampments in Hamilton, and that's how I got to know him. He was an amazing artist, tattoo artist, painter, poet. He made the whole Casbah cry during an open mic, and that's one of the stories that we like telling about Ezra. But he, after being arrested, his house burned down in Hamilton, and I was messaging with him a little bit, trying to find him housing, trying to do all this stuff, but he had to detransition and move back to Toronto. Unfortunately, he had a mental health emergency in the TTC, and the police became involved. They took him to the hospital at Toronto Western. They took him to Toronto Western, and he was medicated and then released back into the street under 72 hours at the request of the police. And unfortunately, he died just a block north of that hospital. And his mom is still fighting for answers. Unfortunately, his mom doesn't respect his transition, and his funeral was very, very hard. He was buried in a sweater with his dead name on it. So he was in the coffin with a sweater that had the wrong name, and it was just very confusing for everybody there. And I realized that if we didn't fight for our friends, even after they died, they would be buried under the wrong names. And I think remembering people by their correct name and remembering people as they would have fought to be remembered is really important. And my kids, Ezra was, it was right before his 20th birthday. And my kids now are all 20, 19, 18. I keep adopting all these little Hamiltonians. And a lot of them have struggled with unhoused issues. A lot of them have been kicked out of their houses for different things, whether that's from their parents come from a very conservative religious background or a very conservative alt-right background. This has been something we've been fighting against. And the religious communities in Canada are unfortunately connected with the alt-right communities. And I'm just trying to come back to this place of love and really reclaiming spirituality and morality for something that queer people can invest in, because we're a part of it, and we're allowed to mourn people however we want, whether that's spiritual or otherwise. And I just really hope that there are more funerals with people's proper names attached to them. But after Ezra's death, this is when I made the house, because a lot of the kids that I was working with officially in my day job, I saw them struggling. So I decided to go unofficially outside of my Boys and Girls Club work and start doing direct outreach to a lot of the youth that were running around Hamilton. But I love these kids. They do give me a lot of hope. But if you want to click on to the next slide. So this is Ezra actually painting. That painting still hangs in this same room. This is my partner's house. I'm really grateful to have this space called Goddess House that's run by the band Goddess just up the street from me. And Ezra actually crashed there right before they got to, before they were forced to move to Toronto and detransition. So this is one of the couches that they surfed on for a while. And I've had a lot of kids come and couch surf and stay in the place that have escaped really harsh living conditions. And I think that it really surprises kids how we open up this space, and we actually just had somebody live with us for 2 months. And it's tight living, it's tight living. But people are always surprised when I say that it comes from our religious background. My partner is Buddhist and he has no sense of property. But my mom also had lots of kids coming and crashing with us because her Catholic background was you just come and you stay and we feed you. And I find a lot of my friends who are spiritual, especially my Jewish friends, will feed everybody. And I think this idea of feeding and housing everyone is like where I come back to with my drag house. So as much as we're about art and sparkles and all of that, even behind the scenes outside of drag, like I'm housing these kids and I'm trying my best to keep them alive. One of my kids right now is actually at the Barrett Center in Hamilton in crisis, and they were sending us pictures of their psych ward Crocs yesterday. So it's just nice to have a group of people that you can rely on and tell them about your health, mental, spiritual, physical, all of those things to catch them before they end up in a space like Ezra was. And like as much as their friends did love them, they were being called the wrong name, and they were being like in spaces where they weren't respected. And I think the thing that shocks people when they come and they hang out with us is I'm not asking them to explain themselves. We just take them as they are. And that really comes from this all-accepting idea that my mom raised me with. This idea that like everybody is God's children, and we're just all trying to survive. We're trying to feed each other, clothe each other, all of those things. But yeah, Ezra is a big reason. The next one. So I'm a big nerd. I love queer history. And Star House that Martha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera made was the main inspiration for housing all of these kids. I know it's a risk, especially because a lot of these kids are drug users, they are mentally ill, they have a lot going on, but it's worth it. I think it's always worth it to open up the door and make sure that they have a safe place to stay. And Star House is a really great example of this. A lot of my kids are sex workers. They do online sex work for survival. And a lot of my kids are trying their best to express their creativity and stay true to themselves. And they should be able to do that in a safe place. So I try and open it up. If I had all the funds in the world, I would start my own Star House. But unfortunately, rent is too expensive. But this has been a long time tradition amongst queer people. And I think that even though like Star House wasn't a religious thing, as soon as the pandemic started, I thought all the churches would open their basements and everybody would be living in the church basements. That was really my theory. And that didn't happen. People didn't open their doors. There weren't people letting refugees stay with them to the same scale that I expected of my community. And we just keep failing and failing and failing, and we have more refugees and more people coming and needing housing, and it's just this ongoing cycle. And I look to things of the past, like they had to do this. They had to find an apartment to house everybody. Nobody's gonna do it, it's just gonna be us doing it. So I realized that I had to start my own house. I had to do something to give a support system to these kids, otherwise they were just gonna fall through the cracks. So bless those hooligans for their example. If you wanna click the next guy. So I love reading, but I'm here for an oral history. A lot of my friends are dyslexic too, so we love podcasts. But making gay history really dove into Star House for me. It's a lot of archival tapes of Marsha P., of Sylvia Rivera. I get to hear their voices, and that's insane. And it's so awe-inspiring to hear them talk about the struggle. I'm only 28, and I'm sponsoring these kids who are 19, who are 20, who are 21, 22. We're not that much older. We don't have that much more money. We don't have more resources. We're all just in this together trying our best, regardless of age. And I think that protecting the queer youth it's just so important. And then we have another podcast, One from the Vaults by Morgan M. Page, who's a Canadian, woohoo! But she's living in the UK right now. Her research is amazing, and it talks about trans history specifically. And I send this to my trans kids because they know this, but trans people have been around for 1 million years, forever, forever. And it's amazing to hear archival tapes of trans people from the 50s talking about their transition. And I want my kids to know that. I want them to know that there have been people before them that have lived beautiful, amazing, crazy lives, that have been insanely successful. But I also want them to know that it's dangerous out there. So I was living in Toronto when Bruce MacArthur was killing people. And we, for those that don't know, the murders that happened in the village a couple of years ago, that happened for decades. We thought it was an Uber driver. So nobody took Uber for those couple of years because we thought an Uber driver was killing us. But he was targeting brown immigrants because nobody was looking for them. And I remember hearing this is by Justin Ling, an amazing Toronto journalist who's queer. Justin interviewed some of the friends of the people who were lost. And one of the men, his car was abandoned outside Mississauga, and it was really random. And they said, he just got a puppy. He would never run away. He just got a puppy. And the police didn't believe them at all. So someone took care of his puppy, and he was just missing. And there were missing posters everywhere of all these brown men. And like, my partner is an immigrant, he's racialized, and I deeply worry for him because I know they're more targeted. And I would deeply worry for my trans friends because they were walking down the street around this time and men were asking them for the time so they could see if they had a chest or not, to out the trans women. So I stay on high alert, and I try and protect my kids as much as possible by sharing these histories with them, sharing with them how to protect ourselves, arming them with knowledge of what's happened in the past, because this can't happen again. Bruce McArthur wasn't that long ago, and that happened for decades. And the police had interviewed him too. Don't get me started, Toronto police. But yeah, I just all this history really made me just see the necessity for youth support and see the necessity for intergenerational knowledge exchange. A lot of my mentors are all cranky old men, and I love them. I love them deeply. I always end up with the 7-year-old, 60-year-old professors because I love hearing about Toronto in the 70s because it was such a political time. And also we have a lot of lessons to learn from them. So I just want to bring these lessons from history and make the future a little bit better. But if we want to click on to the next slide. Speaking of future, this is my drag baby, Oxymoron. His mom actually named him his drag name. He chose his chosen name, but his mom chose his drag name because he's a trans man who's a drag queen. Oxymoron. But yes, so he is a drag queen and porn star and a founding member of House of the Holy Spirit. Any pronouns. These Gen Z hooligans, they don't care about pronouns. I love it. But yeah, I've learned so much from Oxy. This is his birthday. So I've been working with Oxy for a year now. I met him outside of a club that he was definitely too young to be attending, and scooped him up and said, come hang out with us. Let's watch Drag Race and host Drag Race viewing parties and all that. And then this has been 1 year of us working together, and he wanted to host the biggest birthday party possible. So we rented out a historic theater for his birthday. We booked a band, we booked drag, and this is him on stage with the band and all the fans. To be able to celebrate Oxy like this was insane. He's someone that's from Hamilton. His parents are both crust punks that grew up unhoused on the streets of Vancouver, so a very interesting guy. But yeah, Oxy struggled a lot. He's a high school dropout. He works doing alternative programs and all of that, and really does, he does his sex work for survival. And being able to support such a talented human that wasn't getting a lot of support from the community, just simply because he was too young and people weren't taking him seriously. I'm like, no, come on out. We're gonna do all this. I'm gonna teach you how to run an event. I'm gonna teach you how to balance a book. We spent all the money renting this space. It wasn't very well planned, but that's fine. I'm gonna teach you how to book a space. I'm gonna teach you how to book bands and do all of this. And now some of my other kids are the volunteer coordinators for the team. And they're not even out of high school, and now they have all this experience. So it's really empowering for them. And I just asked them, what do you wanna do? I said to Oxy, I was like, what do you wanna do? He said, I wanna be the most famous drag queen in Hamilton. I'm like, I got you, let's do it. And then this was his birthday. This was his capstone event. So this idea of celebration, he made it another year. All of my kids struggle with suicidal ideation. All of them are really trying to make it. None of them thought they were gonna make it past 18. And I remember being a little queer kid and thinking I wasn't gonna make it past 18. So just to go year after year for Ezra, for every other trans guy that hasn't made it, it's a miracle. And I think that drag is one of the things that really pushes Oxy and myself forward, because we get a chance to really express ourselves and celebrate our sexuality, our gender, our outlook on life. Yeah, for this, he sang Pink Pony Club. His brand is pink. He sang Pink Pony Club, and there's the emotional thing of my mama seeing me on stage, and I was filming him, and you could feel like the emotional tension between the two of us, and everyone like turned around and like looked at me, knowing that I was like his drag dad. So it's just this crazy catharsis that happens on stage for something as like upbeat as Pink Pony Club. I'm like almost crying, like filming him. But yeah, I'm really proud of my drag kids, and this is my partner and his twin. They're both Buddhists, so hence them sharing their house with whoever happens to show up. But I love them for it, and I think that's why we ended up working in community together and creating a space like Goddess House. All of Oxy's drag is there too, because he lives in a tiny apartment with his mom. So yes, making space for everybody's art, making space for everybody's mental health. It's been really a gift for me, and I hope it's been supportive for my kids. They've grown quite a bit. If we want to click on to the next guy. So Oxy was so confident that all of a sudden I was hosting a show and I had a grandbaby. So Oxy was at one of the youth support centers that was giving him an internship. And it's a very like sketchy boots area. If Goldie was here, I would name drop. But the people there, he had a really hard time making friends. But the first person he saw was Asher, who now goes by Saint Bambi, who's another trans man, and Oxy grabbed onto him right away and said, "You're coming with me." And he became a drag queen. And this is a very shy, reserved person. He lives in assisted living with like nurses and medical people. So for him to like break out and become like this sultry, sexy drag queen was insane. For him to go from like trans guy, butchest of the butch, like Asher like this, fully bound up, to this was crazy. So to see people bloom like this was amazing. And Oxy has a good eye for that, obviously. This is them at the Hamilton's only gay bar doing the open stage. We have one gay bar, but we love it. We're going to keep it. But yeah, it's been such a growth. And I think that Oxy also is like a practicing witch, which has been really reconnecting for me. I think Catholicism and Wiccan practices have a lot of overlap. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Catholicism is just Judaism and paganism like this. And I'm learning so much more through all my kids, and especially with the Buddhist outlook on life, how we can take something as ancient, as old as religion, and update it into a way that suits our actual lives, and a way that we can have practice. And it's been surprising to me how spiritual the house has been, even though it is the house of the Holy Spirit. It really has been this catharsis and reconnection to like my core as like Rebecca as an ex-Catholic, but also like as Johnny as this community leader. And I kind of became this like, forgive me, glowing presence. I thought I was going to be some like douchey drag king. It did not turn out that way. Your drag persona makes themselves. It's not something you choose. So like for my trans guys, I wish I had a picture of them out of drag to show the contrast, but these are men. And I love that they get a chance to like express their femininity and really celebrate that without that sense of like gender dysphoria. And they've become a lot more gender bendy, I would say, since starting drag. Yeah, if we want to click on the next guy. So I do a lot of art inspired by Oxy. This is the poster I made for his birthday. And it's just been this idea of like lifting everybody up and professionalizing them and making them into these community leaders. Like now people come to Oxy for help when it comes to online sex work, for help when it comes to finding mental health supports, especially my one kid, Bambi. People will come to him when they are like, I'm being rent evicted, what do I do? I'm having a mental health crisis, what do I do? And our DMs are essentially like open to all the queer people in the community. And we've been helping other people plan their own events and try and make space in Hamilton for other queer people. Because we do have a lot of like cis, white, gay men spaces, but we don't have a lot that are friendly towards people of color, trans people, and especially trans men and like non-binary femi people. We're actually going to host like the first lesbian party at the Well. Yeah, I'm super excited. But it comes with a lot of, we do these things called lifeguarding. It came from, if anybody knows Electric Eclectics, those are my mentors. It's up in Meaford. They do this experimental music festival. They have night lifeguards on site. So a lot of people take psychedelics, take drugs at that festival. So they have these lifeguards that go around with like water. They go and they sit with you. They introduce themselves beforehand. So we go around as like sparkly femi people, drag people at these parties and make sure that everybody's okay. And we'll take them outside if they need a break from the sound and all of that. And it's this idea of like care and meeting people where they're at. So like as much as we can throw these big bashes, I still want my super autistic friends to show up and know that they're going to be taken care of and like seen and like loved in a way. So this idea of like the party scene being like rah, 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 it can also have a softer side. And I think that queer people usually, the joke is that like our church is like the gay club. But I want to take a note from that and bring like the fun, but also have this idea of like ritual and care reintroduced into the space. And I think a lot of queer parties are really trying to do this so that we can make more space for, yes, our autistic friends, our disabled friends, people who are like have sensory issues, because the club is not for everyone. When I click next guy. So really like this is Ezra's painting, by the way. So Ezra's painting is like one of the only paintings that hangs at like Goddess House pretty consistently because the space changes all the time. And my partner's twin like mildly jokes, but isn't joking, that Ezra's always there. And I think that my mom, from when I was young, really believed that I had a connection with spirits and was able to see that. And she's very Catholic in that understanding of like, if a spirit is lost, like you have to pray for them and to transition over. And I grew up like very superstitious like that. So whenever we're on the dance floor, we see that Ezra's with us. So this is one of the latest parties that we threw, and we always invite like trans DJs, non-binary people. We're just like trying to filter as many people as physically possible who don't feel held by Hamilton, don't feel held by the greater Ontario community, to come into a space and really be celebrated. Yeah, it's been amazing to see how much Hamilton has really opened up since the house has started. And one of the opportunities that Oxy got to do is he got to be on the cover of the band's latest album, which like really blew up. And someone got it tattooed on their forearm. So now my drag kit is tattooed on someone's forearm. But yeah, that's the album there. And we got to like shoot it together. That's like real goo. And as the goo was being poured, I know. Oxy was like, I'm like, keep going, power through it. But it was like pink goo that we all made together. And just being able to like open up and make all these art shenanigans together and just say yes to each other's projects, like at the drop of a hat, was really amazing. And Oxy also, like, it's been very gender affirming for him. He's been walking around shirtless all the time. He doesn't really need top surgery because like T has done the job. So like his nipple is out there, which is a bit of a scandal. But it's a guy nipple, it doesn't count. But being able to be in a space where Oxy can be shirtless and nobody blinks an eye is amazing. I grew up with like a lot of modesty stuff. Actually, Johnny's pretty modest, I would say, you know. But drag has really helped me break out of that. And Oxy wears like no clothing all the time. So he's been a good influence, reaccepting my body, reaccepting like what my body looks like and getting rid of that shame. And I think that Gen Z has really, as much as they've reconnected to me, my spirituality, they've helped me unpack a lot of the things that I grew up with that I don't need to carry with me anymore. And I think in high school, I thought that I had to give up Catholicism completely. I thought that, okay, this is bad. I can't be a part of it. I can't stand behind this anymore. And as much as I don't stand with the Catholic Church, oh my gosh, the Pope. Don't stand with the Pope. I can still have my own spiritual practice that's informed by my upbringing, that still carries that grieving process with me, that I can carry the people that I've lost with me. And I don't think I realized like how deeply I missed that. Because as a little kid, like my mom would be very intentional with our grieving process. And little things like keeping Ezra's painting up here so he can dance with us every single time we're throwing a party, it makes me feel so much better. And my kids so much better, because they know that if we lose them, we're still gonna remember them like this. We're still gonna be happy that they were here, and we're still gonna like celebrate their memory. If we wanna click on to the next guy. So going back to queer history, I think that we can't fight for a better future, and we can't honor those we've lost without going further back. So a lot of people don't know that the House of the Holy Spirit logo is based off of the concentration camp badge markers. And I actually went to Dachau in high school. I saved up all my babysitting money, and I went to Europe on one of those history trips. And I've never been in a space like that before. And growing up, I knew I wanted to go to Europe, and I knew I wanted to go and see the sites of the concentration camps, because I had grown up with so many stories of Holocaust denial. I'd grown up was so much anti-Semitism that I felt I had to go and be a witness. And we're doing the same thing now with what's happening in Palestine. We're witnesses. And we always said, never again. And it's still happening. And it's insane to me. So I try and carry this history with me, especially like in the logo. So the black triangle was actually for asocials. So that'd be lesbians, sometimes Roma people, but also gender nonconforming people. And then the pink triangle is for homosexuals. So then, of course, we have in the 70s and 90s reclamation of the pink triangle. And I love all of the projects and research that have gone into the reclamation of this symbol and it really being an activism, a call for activism. And I just really wanted to bring that back into the house. So when I got to redesign the logo, I said, like, it has to be a queer history thing. It has to be reminding that we have survived this persecution. We will survive it again, but we have to be responsible for the history and remember that this has happened to us so that we can prevent it and see the signs of all of this coming. Because as soon as Trump was elected, I started getting very political again. I was in school, I didn't care. I dropped a lot of my schoolwork. I started doing a lot of research because I felt this next wave coming. And we're all feeling this wave right now. Drag is under attack, trans people are under attack. What's happening in Alberta, oh my gosh. But I just need my kids to know that like I'm fighting for them as best I can with all the knowledge that I have at my disposal. I think being like anti-fascist is such a base for queer organizing right now. And we can't let them win. And I think that this comes back to the Beatitudes, this thirst for righteousness. And also this idea of mercy. Because as much as these neo-Nazis are inflicting violence, the pain that these people must come from to be able to think like that is insane. So to be able to catch people in Hamilton before they get scooped up by the alt-right has been a very proud thing that I've been able to do. Chatting with people who don't know what drag is. I'm some of the first drag people that people of Hamilton have seen, which is great because I'm a king, represent. But it's boundary breaking. And I think drag is deviant. It's boundary pushing. And this is one of the tools that we can use to fight fascism because wrapping a message in art makes it so much more convincing. So much more convincing. We're sparkly, we're friendly, come be on our team. Not their team. But yeah, and forgiveness, bringing people back into the fold and accepting them. And I think that Catholicism, as much as the forgiveness bit I have beef with, it is something that I try and come back to and remind myself to have mercy and to forgive people and to like live with an open heart. As much as we're all hurting, that person's hurting too. If we want to just click forward. Yes, so now this idea of like censorship around drag. So the pink triangle has been censored before. And then as I was making this presentation, I realized the red triangle is now being censored, which is insane. And the red triangle in concentration camps was for political prisoners. Like, so this idea of feeding people, like there's no aid going into Gaza right now. The North is starving. And all we can do is send money to the community kitchens there. And it shows if something like this were to happen in Canada, the government's not going to come help us. It's going to be the community kitchens. And we have Food Not Bombs in Hamilton, and I think we have Food Not Bombs in Toronto as well. The anti-war organizers are going to save us. And I want to start organizing more and more as queer people. And honestly, the House has helped me gather so many kids. Now they come and they protest with me. Their first Palestine protest has always been with me. Their first march is going to be with me. And I'll go and I'll make sure that the cops don't bother them. They'll take pictures of us and I will pose. Yeah, the Hamilton police and Toronto police know who we are. Ooh, that's fine, we're famous. But we just have to keep pushing back and be these beautiful, sparkly people at the front of this fight. I just think like feeding people is the least we can do, especially in a time right now. So yeah, if you have the money to be able to donate to these community kitchens, that's been my only like saving grace. To be like, what can I do? I can share this around, and that's all we can do right now. We can rally our government and try and push as much as we can for the anti-war agenda, but it's not doing so hot in Canada, and I really feel like queer people need to step up. And the House is one way that I've organized a group of people to be very, very loud, to be very, very supportive. The drag community got a lot of pushback. for supporting Palestine, the idea of pink washing. I don't care if it's illegal to be queer in Palestine. Nobody should die. So my kids know that they can be as pro-Palestine as possible. I will fight to the death for them. They can be as political as possible. Sometimes I dress up as sexy Trudeau and I cut up a flag. I'm hoping to get a Pope look together, but it's going to be so expensive because he's very regal. But yeah, that's just a little bit about my house. This was such a hard presentation for me to make because I just want to brag about all my kids and talk about death and grieving. But if we wanted to chat a little bit and open up questions, this is such a cute little group of people. Yeah, do we have time? But thank you all for being such a lovely audience and making this space for me. Oh yeah, my We're Excited, they're all hyperlinked. But yeah. If you want to click up to the We're Excited, because then we have Will Munro showing. So Will Munro is a Toronto community activist who went to OCAD and was badass. His parties, I think, are the base for my like punk organizing. But yeah, if anybody has any questions about Hamilton or nerdy things. Yeah, go for it, friend. Oh, the mic. Yeah, so everyone can hear. A well-trained audience. Oops. Test.
Check AB. Oh, there we go.
Oh, yeah.
I'm curious if you've had any contact with some of the mutual aid organizations that are doing similar work like this in Europe, like the Youth House in Copenhagen is doing phenomenal pieces. And the political situation in Denmark in some ways is very similar, but in some ways very different because they have this long history of taking entire regions of Copenhagen and saying, nope, no police allowed in here. But yeah, if you wanted a connection with some of the activists and anarchists who are doing that work out over there, I'd be very happy to.
Yeah, Copenhagen.
Because I think the worldwide connections are so important too. Because fascism isn't just a Canadian problem. It's not just a U.S. problem. It's
everywhere.
Global capital.
Yeah. My friend did a documentary on the squatters' rights in the Netherlands, and her mom was actually, or her grandmother, sorry, was moved out of the Jewish community there and then returned and helped with the squatters' rights. So I got to learn a lot from that. But yeah, Copenhagen, cool.
Okay.
Cool.
Anybody else? Oh, okay.
Yes. Oh, Mike.
One thing that I wanted, by the way, my name is Arsena from Vancouver, British Columbia.
Oh, welcome.
One thing I always tell people whenever I'm like out and about and I talk to like a lot of my like friends that like to do like volunteer work, there's one thing I always wanted to do, and it would be to create a house for like some of the trans youth and some of the trans young adults that are like struggling. I'm wondering, how do you go about starting a house?
So a drag house?
Like a drag house with trans kids that can also learn how to become drag queens or kings.
Honestly, it's just hanging around the community and finding the youth. A lot of them hang around skate parks. I met them at the Kill Room. Goldie's back, so I can name drop things in Hamilton. But yeah, no, going to the spaces where they're already at. Like the Boys and Girls Club was a great way for me to understand what was happening in Hamilton, because these kids had also just come out of the pandemic, had done online school. Their need for socialization was so strong, and the need for problem-solving tools, interpersonal problem-solving tools was also very strong. So we have a lot of fights in my house. We brawl, but we come out at the end all good. And I think it's this idea of also organizing, and being a trans person, having to organize your own healthcare, housing, et cetera, comes with a lot of stress. And I just take the kids where they're at. So if you're having a mental breakdown and you're angry because you're being kicked out, valid, man. I'm not going to tell you not to be angry. But it's going and meeting the youth. To be able to start a house is just being able to invite them in. They trust me as someone who's a little bit older, who's taken an interest in their art. And I try and let them know that this isn't a power dynamic. I'm like their mentor. I'm like their support system. So my one kid was short $100 on rent, and he sent me this big, long message. I'm so embarrassed. I said, no problem, dude. And I sent like $50 more than what he asked for. And like, that's all you can do. And it's been 2 years of doing that with these kids. I just adopted a new person who we're going to announce soon. And they were so happy to be invited in. I said to them, this isn't a power dynamic. This isn't a contract. You can leave whenever you want. But if you stay here, I'll support you for as long as you can. And I think that it comes back, I really want to be a parent. And I raised my 2 siblings. And this feels like another round of that, but I get to be a lot more mentally healthy and take them where they're at. Take them where they're at. And if they want to leave and never talk to me again, that's fine. I'll still be their landlord reference. I'll be their work reference. And I am their landlord reference and their work reference. But yeah, just like meeting them where they're at, going and finding the kids. I found a lot of trans support groups too. A lot of my friends have made friends through there. And that's how Asher and Bambi met. Asher and Bambi. Oxy and Bambi, so many names. But yeah, any other?
My name's Michelle. I'm also from Vancouver.
Ooh.
And I want to thank you for all that you do and who you be, and for sharing that with us today. I'm someone who was also raised Catholic, both parents, Italian, Irish. Don't get more Catholic, I don't think, than that. Maybe Filipino. And just your story about embracing the best of your faith tradition and that circle of, I would, I'm putting words in your mouth, but maybe they're my words about my journey, sort of disgust and exile.
Mm.
And forgiveness and mercy. And really grace. Right? Grace to not let the worst of the human institution of the church take the church, small c, capital C, or just faith, away from you. So I haven't encountered many Catholics who also are embracing queer and trans culture and life and art, and that's relatively new for me as an ally. But I'm inspired by you, and I thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, it's I think Catholicism is a really strict religion and sometimes can be really harsh, but that's not who my mom is, and I really experienced Catholicism through her. So I give her full credit for that. Yeah, and really focusing on interfaith. Like Queer Halal Time in Hamilton is celebrating the connection between Islam and queer culture, and it makes my heart so happy. Because I think a lot of those kids felt really rejected. And now they're working with the community kitchen, they're organizing, and they're connected, and they throw amazing parties. They throw amazing parties, and they're beautiful people, and just, yeah, accepting people where they're at it's been really healing for me as well. Yeah, lovely to meet another Catholic who's on the same journey.
My name's Chloe Beatrice, B for short. I'm from Cumming, Georgia, so a long way away. I came in and I'm sorry I was late on this, on the tail end of you were talking about somebody who fell through the cracks and had to detransition, and then I'm not sure if I'm correct in this, passed away.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that. I think everyone in here has had a meet with somebody in that part of their life where you just don't know what's going to happen. What would you say to those people that do end up falling through the cracks and can't utilize like the youth transitional services that are available?
I would say find someone you trust. Find anyone you trust and just stay with them for a little bit. And make sure that you're with someone. Because I think the thing that hurt Ezra was moving here to Toronto. It wasn't so much the detransition, it was that there was no one here to catch them. And they had a really big community in Hamilton. That was, if they had been in Hamilton, they could have called anyone. They could have called anyone, anytime. I don't know if they called anyone here in Toronto, but it wasn't enough of a support team. And the fact that they were at my partner's house like a week or two before they died breaks my heart. Because if they had stayed there a little bit longer, maybe it would have worked out. But it's obviously not their fault, and they just tried their best. And I feel like we as a society keep failing people, so just not beat up on yourself. And try and find somebody that you trust. Whether that's an online friend, honestly, Discord is a really great place for trans people, ? My kids all run Discord servers. I'm too old, I don't understand. I really don't. But yeah, online community is a really great way. Like I remember being a Tumblr kid. That's how I learned about like bisexuality and asexuality. I wouldn't have gotten that knowledge had I not connected with people online. And I think people don't realize online friends are still friends. And they're still people you trust and someone you can reach out to if things get really hard. Yeah, try and have one or two people, 1 or 2 or 3 people. Even if you don't trust them completely, you can just reach out to a little bit. And they don't even have to be trans. It's really crazy to see how especially parents will step up for other kids. I find a lot of parents of trans people will start parenting other kids and start adopting them. And I think that's a role that I've kind of fallen into a little bit. But yeah, I just hope that someone out there is gracious enough to be able to catch that person. And we can only train ourselves to be that person, train our friends to be that person. That's all we can do. Oh, mic request at the front.
No worries.
Get those steps in. Okay.
Hello. So, as you were sharing, I saw a lot of parental instincts in you and instincts of giving and generosity and care. And as someone who also shares that, and I know that there's other people in this room who share that, the more you shared, the more I recognized like a rising sense of panic in me for you. And I was wondering if you could share some of your self-care practices or spiritual self-care practices that keep you going in this work and prevent you from like burning out.
Yeah. I think my kids, Oxy is one of the most tenacious businessmen I have ever met. He posted today, or November 1st, actually, I'm going to skip that. He does sex work, so it was kind of inappropriate, but talk to me later. But he's very good at marketing, and this is November, so take what anybody on the internet. Yes, so he's very good at marketing. But I really think that my kids like support me in this way of catching me when I'm burning out. And they organize the volunteers, the lifeguards. I don't run door by myself anymore. My kids run door. And if I'm having a hard day, like they come over and they have tea with me. And it's really nice. I think my partner is also, he's a main organizer of his band. So we joke, like the House of the Holy Spirit, it's Goddess House together. So Goddess, the band, House of the Holy Spirit is Goddess House. And he is the person that takes care of me the most. And it's this back and forth relationship of we are all peers in this space. So as much as I am dad, my kids are sometimes so much more mature than me. And they step in and I text them when I'm getting paranoid. I say, am I being paranoid about this? And they said, no, like just de-escalate yourself. And they're also on their mental health. Like I don't think they have as much trauma as I have, because they came up in a different situation. And they've really helped me unpack my own like millennial baggage that I carry of like social justice, social justice, social justice. And they are very about celebration. Like, you need to celebrate. We need to throw you a birthday party. So they'll organize my birthday party if I'm too burnt out, or all those things. But if I burn out, they step up, and we keep running events. Like, it's this space making. And even Halloween, I ran the first event of Halloween night, and the second event, I was just a guest. So we always do this thing of like, I'm just a guest at this, and I'll come and I'll hang out and be fine and help the kids run it. But it is this kind of give and take. And I think that my partner and Goddess, like the band, is one of my main supports, because I don't have my own. Now I am a bit more in touch with my mom, which has been really crazy. You don't realize how healing that is until you do that reconnection. But before that, it was really very much my partner. And now that I've been with Oxy for like 2 years, I lean on him quite a bit. And they've helped me discover like my own strength and my own weakness. And like, I think I've become a lot more vulnerable and open. I was definitely, I burnt out raising my 2 siblings for sure. So I didn't want to do that again. But yeah, we take long breaks. We take really long breaks, and we just like want to do a movie night. Let's watch Paris is Burning. Want to just project Zelda, and we can play Zelda for a little bit. So it's very in and out of drag. It's very being for each other as like people. Feels like I have siblings again. Yeah. As much as I am older than them, it's not so much a patriarchal power dynamic. I don't know how to explain it. I think you got to meet Oxy. But yeah, thank you for your concern. My partner, that's his number one concern too. Yes. I wanted to bring him here. I know, it was too early for him to get up from Hamilton. But yeah, thank you so much for all your beautiful questions, you guys.
Thank you so much, St. John Boy. Really appreciate it. Show your love one more time, please. And we're off. We're off camera. You can say anything you want.
No, not November. It was No Not November. That's what he was advertising.